Hello, my name is Carl Weinberg. I'm adjunct professor of economics in New York University. Welcome to my class, International Finance, for the spring semester of 2002. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be in class in person to welcome you tonight. I'm in London, and if you're watching this video, it means that our internet connection video conference, as we planned to conduct this class, didn't work. However, I hope you'll find these few comments that I'm able to record here useful in telling you a bit about what we're going to do in this class, how we're going to do it, and what you need to do in order to succeed in it. The course is called International Finance. Probably a better name for the course would be Macroeconomic Adjustment of Open Economies in the Presence of External Disequilibria. Of course, if we called it that, no one would ever sign up to take it. So we call it International Finance, but let me be very clear. This course is not about making deals in international capital markets. For that course, you have to go over to Stern, to the business school. This course is very much an economics course, and it's about the way economies and the prices of currencies and other things in economies adjust when the balance of payments doesn't come to zero. You've all been introduced to international trade at some point in your careers as economists. Probably you learned a little bit about it in your macroeconomics course. You learned that the X minus M is part of the equation that gives you GDP. You also may have taken a course in trade. In fact, I hope that you have. It'll make this course easier. In that course, you learned about the pure theory of exchange. You learned mainly about goods being exchanged for other goods. But that theory didn't allow for the flow of goods going one way not to be equal to the flow of goods going the other way. But we know that once we allow money to be used as a quid pro quo for international transactions, that there can be imbalances. And when that happens, money starts accumulating on one side or the other side of the transaction, and then something else has to adjust. This course is about those adjustments. It's easy to say a country has a trade deficit, and thus it ought to have a cheaper currency. But that's not the only thing that can adjust. In fact, the only way that we can have an imbalance in the external sector of the economy is if we have an equal and opposite counterpart imbalance in the domestic side of the economy. These adjustments will be the subject matter for this class. Let's go over the reading list for this course and start with the course outline and run over the topics that we hope to cover. The class begins next week with a review of the pure theory of trade. This may take as many as 2 lectures. What we hope to accomplish here is to make sure you know why it makes sense for countries to exchange goods and payment for goods internationally. To learn that there's an advantage to both sides in a trade, we'll look at the pure theory of trade and some basic models from Ricardo and right through the Heckscher-Ohlin model. For many of you, this will be a review. This should be a review. But for some of you, it may be a first look at these issues, and you'd be advised to read ahead before coming to this class. In the second lecture, or the second topic, which will probably be in the third class, we will start to address the balance of payments, looking first at the accounting system of the balance of payments. How are international transactions recorded? Where does the data come from? What are the linkages and the relationships between the balance of payments accounts and the overall national income and product accounts? What are the linkages of the balance of payments accounts to the flow of funds accounts and the money supply? These are things that we can glean just from going through the accounting of where things come from, how they're accounted for, and how the different accounts interrelate. We need this framework to be able to analyze where we'll be going with the course. Then we'll take a digression on the third topic. We'll talk about the transfer problem. This was the debate after the First World War about whether or not Germany could ever pay its war reparations in meaningful terms. I know this sounds like a dated problem, but the issue of countries delivering bags of their own money to other countries to settle international debts has a long history and is very relevant to our global environment today. The same issues that John Maynard Keynes and Bertil Ohlin debated in the 1920s underline all of the issues involved in moving money across borders and form the basis for every single problem we'll discuss in this class. It's my view that every problem that we discuss in balance of payments theory can be boiled down into some kind of a transfer problem. We'll look for those kinds of relationships as we move forward in the course and deal with problems. But first we have to go back and read the first most elemental articles about the transfer problem. Then we'll make another quick digression and talk about the relationship between internal and external balance from a policy point of view. What's involved in hitting an internal objective, like, say, full employment or low inflation, and an external objective, like eliminating a trade deficit or having a capital account surplus for development purposes. These are these may be two conflicting objectives, or are they? Is there a way that policymakers can hit multiple objectives at the same time? And is it possible to use domestic policy instruments to affect international considerations? This will be the topic number 4 in our class. In topic number 5, we're going to talk about the gold standard. Now, gold really isn't used much anymore today, but we use gold as a proxy in talking about payments of money. As money flows from country to country, does the money supply in one country change? Well, it must. Does the money supply in the other country change? Yes, it must, and in an equal and opposite manner. Can these flows equilibrate a balance of payments adjustment? Do they lead to stable solutions to the balance of payments? That will be what we'll be investigating. Lecture 6, Keynesian adjustment, will talk about changes in income and demand that may result from a change in the current account. And will these lead a current account deficit that starts off as small to go back toward balance, or will it lead to an ever-widening current account deficit, an unstable situation, in which case current account deficits become very dangerous indeed? We'll look there at multipliers and see how they work. Then, and only then, we'll return to devaluation as a possible policy tool to use in solving an external balance. But this is a little bit different than the way the world works today. Today, currencies are determined on the open market. In this discussion, we'll be treating currencies as if they were set by governments, as they were, say, from the 1950s through the early 1970s. When a country can intentionally change the value of its currency, how do those changes affect the current account? That will be the topic of the devaluation discussion, and we'll see that it's not quite as obvious as you might think it is. Lecture 8 will deal with flexible exchange rate theory. Now we're going to turn the problem around. We're going to say the value of a currency through devaluation does not determine the economic outcome, but rather the outcome of the economy determines the exchange rate in a freely floating market. How does the market for foreign exchange work? What are the considerations in determining supply and demand and the balance between the two? Once we have that down, then we'll talk a little bit about institutions, about the markets themselves, how they work, and how traders go about establishing on a day-to-day basis fundamental balances between supply and demand, even though they don't realize that they're doing it. And this lecture will probably be about as close as we actually get to dealing with the real modern world of exchange rate trading as we do it today, as close to the let's make a deal topic that you may have been looking for in taking this course.